Thank you so much for being here today. It's such an honor to have you all here today. And I really trust God that the impact He has for you as a person, what He wants to do in you as a person would be fulfilled. And my name is Bukola. I'm the host for Ordinary People Audacious Steps. And if you can hear me, can you just please give me a reaction? Let's do a little sound check. You can hear me? Can we all hear me? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Perfect. All right. So we'll just dive right into it and get it going. And before I leave the floor for my guest, or our guest, to introduce himself and tell us a bit more about himself, please, if you have any question, if you have any contribution, you have lessons you want to share with us from your own journey, please feel free to drop it in the chat or give me a hand raise and I will get to you as we proceed. So thank you once more for being here, everyone. Thank you so much. All right, so let's get to it. All right, can we meet you? Can you please introduce yourself so we know who you are, just assume we don't know you. Just tell us a bit more about you. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to say thank you to Bukola for having fun. Bukola and I go way back, a very long time. And interestingly, she's married to one of my mentors, who is also on the call. So I feel like a small boy right now. I know many people will be shocked. Anyway, it's so good to be here. Thank you for having me. And I hope that this time that we have would be impactful and be able to share wisdom and people can also learn one or two. Okay, so my name is Kingsley Udofa and I'm a husband to one wife, a musician, a music executive, founder of Gruvcore Ltd UK. I'm a lover of God and everything I do is just an expression of God's grace upon my life. I think that would be like a brief summary of who I am, basically.
All right, thank you. How long have you been doing music? Because I know that you've been doing music for as long as I have known you, and that's been like a very, very long time now. So if you have to put like a timeline on it and say, okay, maybe an estimation or something, like how long have you been doing music? Yeah.
Interestingly, I would say I was born into a family that is really, really musically inclined with a good foundation in music. I know my grandfather is a musician, so right from from a very tender age, I was exposed to music. So I would say as at way back children's church, I started doing music already. And if I can put a year to it, maybe I would say as at maybe 98 going into 2000, when I can, talk about my consciousness and, being aware of doing this thing intentionally. Let me put it down. But it's that long. But to talk about professional music, I would say, let me not go ahead of myself anymore. But I know that it was as at 2000 and 2003, between 2004 2005. That was when I started taking this professionally. It's just been a journey of grace and experience.
Yeah, so you didn't just stumble into music. I mean, you like you said, you grew up into it, and so was that how the passion for it developed? Like how you just, because I know, okay, from what you said now, so definitely not every member of your family is into music, right? So for you got to develop a passion for it, so to say. So now, but I want us to like have a clear clearer perspective on what passion is now,
Okay.
because I know it's a word that is used a lot. You know, you hear people say, "I'm passionate about this, I'm passionate about that." You know, you see it, you see people write it in their CV. You see people write it in their bio. I'm passionate. I'm passionate. So, but I sort of want us to get a clear or a clearer perspective. I know it's a word that is used a lot. So, but if you're to
Okay.
define what passion is now, when you say you are passionate about music, because, you know, like I said, you've been passionate about music for as long as I have known you. So, but if you're to define what passion is, what would you say passion is?
Hmm. I like to define passion from, for me, when I speak of, maybe not a definition per se, but for me, when I speak about passion, I speak about passion from a place of conviction, from a place of, because trust me, um, passion dies out, passion wears out as time unfolds. But from the events of my life, I realized that what fuels that passion, which is actually the source, is doing things from a place of conviction rather, knowing what, which is my own, in my own situation, this is my own case, knowing what God will have you do, and then staying true to that, regardless of whatever comes your way. So when there are instances where you are faced with a lot that would, make you give up on what you genuinely love, it is from that place of conviction that keeps you going.
Okay, so passion goes way beyond something you enjoy or
Yeah,
a hobby. You know, it's something that you can endure pain for, so to say.
exactly.
Yeah, something you can endure pain for, something you can keep persisting for. So it's not just, oh, I like to do this, I enjoy doing this. It's something that, you know, you can go through challenges for, so to say. Meanwhile,
Sacrifice.
yeah,
Yeah.
that does, yeah, that perspective is kind of huge, because, you know, it sort of helps us reflect on the things we call passion. Like, okay, when I call this thing a passion, is it something I can keep persisting at even when it gets very difficult? And yeah, trust me, it's going to get very difficult. Yeah. Is this something I can endure pain for? Like I can sacrifice for? And I also feel like passion also gives you a sense of responsibility. Like it's it's more of a burden. It's something that burns in your heart and, you know, gives you burden. It makes you see things from just beyond ambition, so to say. Like it's beyond ambition. It's something that goes way beyond that. Thank you very much. Then you made mention of something. You made mention of the fact that, you know, to an extent, your conviction has fueled you. Because I was thinking about it, that it's one thing to be passionate about something, which is that, okay, you enjoy something, you want to keep going at it and all of that. It's also another thing to carry a level of conviction about it. You know, it is conviction that, like you said, it is conviction that keeps you going, that fuels you, that keeps you going. Well, at what point did you get to that point where you became very convinced, like, this is it for me. This is way beyond passion. This is not just something I enjoy. It is way beyond passion now. It's something that, like, this is it. This is what I know my life is all about. This is what I really want to do. Yeah. At what point? How did you get there?
Okay, I thank you for that question. I'm particularly glad that we actually went to the same university. So majority of the things I'll be saying will not be as though I'm just bluffing. I remember today at rehearsal, I was telling my choir members, because I happen to be the music director, I was telling them that back in uni, sometimes we rehearse for almost 12 hours. I remember the days of FSF and SCF. But that's just by the way. For me, I would say that this conviction started way back as at 2008, 2009, particularly my university days, because wherever I'm opportune to talk or speak, I always make reference to my foundation being, my journey from the university. It was a time in my life where, God dealt with me seriously, and I had vision for my life and God showed me. It was more like confirmation of the things I was already working in. Of course, there were words of prophecies, you could see traces of all of those things. You were already acting in it. But at that time, that was when, the vision was clearer to me. I remember when I would just spend time praying and trusting God for, the next phase of my life and what I'm supposed to do. I remember one clear instance, and this is to also say that one of the things that God taught me earlier on in life was to actually walk from a place of conviction, to focus on what God has called me to do, and to know that there are times and seasons, to know that whatever God will have me do, He's going to take me through due process. So I remember there were certain instances where I had the opportunity to, fast track a lot of things that were going on in my life, but because of my dealings with God and knowing that it wasn't time to do certain things, I refrained, and I took her back. So my university days was, I think it was like 2009 to I think 2015, if I'm correct. Yeah. So it was a time of not just sharpening my skills as a musician, but a time to also deepen my work with God. And it was from that place where I even found expression. And one of my favorite scripture is from Ephesians, that we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works which the Father had beforehand prepared for us. So this was a season where I had clarity in my life. This was a season where I was trained. If not, I wouldn't have been refined like this. I wouldn't have been polished like this. So it was a season of pruning for me. It was a season where I learned to stay with God. It was a season where I learned to, build with God and to know the direction for my life, even as it pertains to my career and ministry. So I would always talk about my university days. I know there
Okay,
are
so
some people
it
here
was
that
at that
might.
point that was it for you. You just knew that, okay,
Yeah.
this is what I'm going to be doing. Yeah. And I also sort of believe that time would always test our conviction. Time would
Mhm.
test our conviction, the things you believe, the faith you have. Time will test it. Life would test it. People will question it, because
Mhm.
I actually don't know. Okay, let me even ask first. When you knew, how did let's start with your family now. How were they really receptive? How did they take it? Because they sent you to school.
Yeah, true. I remember I remember, was it 100 level or 200? I didn't really do well in school. My grades were not too good, and I was so scared to talk to my parents because I knew that they would attribute it to I'm doing music and all of that. But I just summoned courage and I spoke to my mom and my dad. It felt as though they took it well, but when it was time to go back to school, I remember my dad vividly saying, "Leave music and focus on your studies and all of that." So I wouldn't really say that they were opposed to it, but there were seasons particularly where they didn't take it well. But of course, because maybe because of their dealings with God and because of the foundation that we have also in my family. So I would say that it also in a way helped me to stay true to this, true to what I'm doing right now. So there have been seasons where even after being convinced, I remember fast track to about almost 2020, it felt like things were not happening. Meanwhile, this was like a phase where God was actually, taking me through another season of, trial and teaching me certain things. But it felt like things were not working and they were questioning, go and get a job, all of those things, going to the corporate world and all of that. But, so there were certain seasons where, they were opposed to it. But thank God that the rest is history today.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, like I was saying earlier, time will test your convictions. Life challenges will test what you believe in. People will question it. Okay, if you say this is it, if you're sure this is it, if you're saying this is God, then why is also so not happening? Why are we not seeing visible results? Why are we not? Why is there no growth? Why is nothing happening? And questions. And
Exactly.
it's not like they ask those questions out of spite. They just don't get it. They just don't get it. Then
Mm-hmm.
it's said for you as a person or us as a person to actually get it. Yeah. So in seasons like that, in situations like that, we go back to God and we deepen our conviction. Conviction actually grows with time, to be honest. It's not something that just happens at once. It grows with time. It is something we
Yeah.
deepen as time goes on. When you face challenges, it is not the time to stop. It is an invitation to deepen what you know. So it is an invitation to go back to God and also ask questions and wait on Him and just let Him strengthen you in those moments. It is not a time to stop. It is a time to deepen what you already know. So for everyone, I remember there was a day I woke up and I had things going on for me and all of that. I woke up that morning and I was feeling different kinds of things. I was tired. I was angry. I was angry at God. I was angry at a lot of things, and all of that. And I just lay on the floor and I was crying and just pouring everything out to God, like, God, this and that. Why is this like this? Why is that like that? And one beautiful thing about God is He always shows up. He sees
Mm-hmm.
our hearts. He knows exactly where we are at. So there is no point hiding or packaging or try. No, there's no point. There's no point. There's no point. So later, during that day, somebody just reached out to me. Sister just reached out to me. I was like, "You've been on my mind," and then she was like, "Okay, let's talk." And we got talking. It was just so beautiful for me because as that morning, I was not it at all. So it just shows how God sees us. God actually sees us. He sees us.
Mm-hmm.
So in moments where your faith is shaky, your conviction is shaky, the things you think you know are shaky, people are asking you questions, like questions that even you yourself don't really have answers to.
Answers.
Questions that you don't have answers to. It's not an invitation to stop. It's an invitation to go back to God and deepen our conviction. Thank you so much for that. So, can you still just on this issue of conviction? Can you still tell us those specific things? The things that have helped you as a person, because you've been doing this for a very long time, like specific things that have helped you over the years to become more solid in what you know.
Um, let me talk about having examples aside aside being convinced and aside running with a word from God. I think one of the things that really helped me from a very young age was I surrounded myself with people who were already ahead of me. I had a lot of mentors, people that I could learn from. So I believe that in a season where there's confusion, in a season where it feels like you don't know the next step, sometimes someone has been through that phase, someone has gone through that, before you, and is just having to have the right association, and you wouldn't have to go through certain things. So I was surrounded with a lot of examples, a lot of people who helped me in every area of my life. So I believe that is that we live in a world where people actually think that imitation is bad. Imitation is not lack of creativity. When you look up to someone, it feels like you are just submitting to mentorship, when it feels like you have an authority over you, when you have people you submit to who can, regardless of your state in life, it feels like you're not free to do what you want to do. But I just like to say that it's always good to surround ourselves with people that ahead of us. It's always good to have mentors. It's always good to have, of course, this is a faith-based gathering. Have a pastor, have pastors around you that can guide you at certain instances when you are genuinely weak or feel like you cannot carry out, God's work or God's vision for your life. So that's one thing that has really helped me. I mentioned earlier in the call that Bukola is married to someone who actually mentored me while I was in school. I believe some people on this call will know. So I was surrounded with a lot of people who taught me things. Funny how sometimes even these people that I was surrounded with, they didn't have to teach me with words. They didn't have to sit me down, have sessions, just learning by example, seeing how people live their life, seeing how people take their work with God serious, seeing how people take their studies seriously, seeing how people, take their assignment, their business and everything seriously. So I just learned by that. I think that's one of the advantage that God gave me earlier in life. I remember back in children's church how there's a thing in Foursquare. I don't know if it still happens now when there's children's church under if you're a teenager, there's I think it's low crusader or high crusader or something. So we had low teenagers, we had high teenagers, and then we had youths. So when I was still in children's church, I was already working with teenagers who were already ahead of me. And if you would see me, you already think I'm 14 or 15 years. I'm already a teenager because of the things I was doing and how my mind was working at that time. It was just a thing of association. So that's one thing that has really helped me in life. And I want to encourage, people. Isolation is not good. Try to find out people who are ahead of you who can also put you through in whatever you're doing.
Thank you very much. Again, we're going back to the power of community. Very, very important. Very important. Thank you very much. So can you just give us a sneak peek into the things you've had to do that took so much from you, like steps you've had to take that, that took your blood, water, and sweat and everything.
Let me talk about a more recent one.
Okay.
I have a company in the UK now, and was it 2024 or last year? I think it was last year. I got a commercial property. When I did, even my wife was scared of me. People around me were like, "You are so bold, you are so audacious." I just saw an opportunity, and I mean that's one thing I've learned in life. If God is asking you to do something, just take that step. When you start putting the maths together, sometimes it's good to plan. Sometimes it's good to, mark the pros and cons and to know when to move and when not to move. But I've also learned in life that most times when God tells you to do something, it's always good to take a step of faith. So getting that property was a step of faith for me. In fact, it felt like, I just took everything I had and I just got that property. And then it was after I did that I started saying, okay, what next? What am I going to do with this? And if you know women, thank God my wife is not on this call. Women like to plan. Why are you doing this? How are you going to do this? What are you going to do? What's the plan for 2 years and all of that? But sometimes I know that a step of faith demands that you just pick up your back and go. God is sending you to this place and you're just doing it. It's a bold step that even me myself, I'm scared of myself. Like that's one thing I don't think I would in my comfort zone want to do. It stretched me applying for government funding, afterwards for it. It didn't come true, but it was not a time for me to, to quit on what I felt was right and what God was telling me to do. So I think that's one thing that stares right at me at my face right now as something bold that I've done.
Okay, thank you very much. So one of the anchor verse for what we do here, Ordinary People Initial Step, is Acts 4:13, and it says that the people around saw the courage of the disciples. They saw their courage, and despite the fact that they were ordinary people, it was just obvious that they had been with Jesus. So while, for a while now, we've been focusing on, the audacious steps, the courage and all of that. But, I was just looking at it. There was a being with Jesus behind the scene, and it had an impact on what people saw, the expressions people were seeing on the outside. So, how has your private walk with God? How has those dealings in the private? How has it impacted, how you show up in your calling and how you keep showing up in your calling, in what God has called you to do?
Okay, I would say that I would say that first of all, like I mentioned, that God God takes you through different seasons, and that has been the testament of my life. Where one of the things that I'm going to clearly say, one of the things that I've learned from my work with God is patience, how to be diligent and to be patient, to go through different seasons of life where it feels like things are actually working very well, and God carries you through that season to another season where it feels like it's a season of dryness. So in that moment, I've learned over time. God has taught me how to not joke with my secret place, how to totally depend on God. I think my journey has been a journey of faith. I don't think we as individuals can achieve anything in this life. I don't think as believers, we wouldn't, true success will not be counted at the way unbelievers would count it. And that's the way I see life. That true success comes from, having to having to hear from God and having to carry out God's assignment for your life, regardless of what is happening around. And I think that's one thing that I learned from a very tender age that has helped me till now. No matter what is going on, if God is not if God is not leading me in a certain way, if God is not leading me in a certain direction, I don't take those steps, regardless of what might seem to be in vogue at the moment. But once I have a go ahead from God, then I can do it. So I would say that my journey has been a journey of faith. It has been a journey of obedience. Particularly, I know that being in the music industry, I mean, but even back when I was in Nigeria, my faith was really tested. Having to do. I know these days people say secular is relative. Let me just say maybe profane. Having to bend your standards, having to give into to certain pressures. But my journey has been from a place of personal relationship with God and listening to what He would have me do, and also being led by Him. So I'll say that has just been one personal dealing with in my life that I hope can encourage anybody. It's always good to, no matter the audacious steps you want to take, no matter the bold step you want to take, if God is not leading you, you wouldn't really, and it feels like you succeed in that thing, you wouldn't really count that as true success God is not, if God is not the source, if God is not the foundation. And if the foundation is not right, then there's nothing that can be built upon that would last.
Yeah. So the foundation is very important. And, I actually really like what you say, that no matter what you're building, no matter the steps you're taking, if it's not backed by God, especially for us as believers, you can't count that as success. You're just doing your own thing. So it is very, very important that, we have a solid private walk with God, and we know how God, we also understand our seasons and understand how God is dealing with us part time, what He's doing in our lives part time. And yeah, thank you very much. So also, has there been failures now? Have you had to go through failures, or what are the failures you have gone through, and how has that, how have you been able to navigate? Because I know that also one thing that we need to talk about is the fact that it is God does not mean that it would automatically or instantly yield fruits or instantly yield results. Yeah. So there are times where God also takes you through those seasons where, like you said, where, are seasons of failures and, things you have to learn from and all of that. So have you gone through those seasons? Yes. And how have you navigated them, or how were you able to navigate them? Also, I also think that sometimes people struggle to rise after failures. That's also a very important thing. It's not like they don't want to do what God is saying they should do. It's just that sometimes people struggle to rise after they have failed. So how did you navigate that? Or what would you say to somebody that is currently in that phase?
This is one thing that I usually don't like to talk about because it's quite sensitive. But permit me, I would, maybe I would not be too specific. But there was a season, there maybe not a failure, but a lesson per se, and maybe someone can learn a thing or two from this. It is possible for you to be doing what God would have you do, and then God can still tell you to leave that thing to do something else. And one of the scriptures that I always remember is, or just paraphrase, how not to start in the spirit and end in the flesh. So there was a time where it felt like I was serving where I was supposed to serve. I was doing what I was supposed to do. And then that season was over. It was time to move to the next phase of my life. It was time to move to the next level. But because this felt like it was working, I didn't want to let it go until it became really messy, until it became, really bad. And it was a really, really dry season for me because this was something that was good. I was enjoying. I'm trying not to be too specific. I was enjoying service there, loving up on God and doing what God will have me do. But a season came where that wasn't just right at the time. That it was time to move on to the next level and the comfortable me. God taught me a lot of lesson in that period. The comfortable me was still there, and led to a season of dryness. That answering your question, I think one of how to rise from failure. Me, this might work for you. I cried to God for mercy. I spent time, just praying and waiting on God and just trusting on God for a means of escape. Might not be the right language, but for how to navigate that season. And I will say that God just sent help for me. And after that phase of my life, I've just seen breakthrough from one level to another. I've seen promotion on all sides. So I'll say Bishop Oyedepo used to say this thing. Um, Bishop Oyedepo said one time how, if I'm correct, how that he went to Kaduna to start a church and things were not working. I'm not sure if it's Kaduna, but that was just the story. It just came to mind now. How they went to start a church somewhere, and after several months of toiling and all of that, he just heard God that this is not the place. Bishop Oyedepo thought this is not the place, and immediately he left. That he did a crusade or so, it wasn't fruitful and all of that, and he left. I think that's one lesson that everyone should glean to, and that's why I also said I've learned in life not to do what God is not asking me to do, not to go where God is not asking me to do. So it was a season where I held on to what I felt was working, but God was no longer involved. It was time to move on. So I hope this encourages someone.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
tried not to be specific, but
Yeah, so it is important that we learn to, or we still hold on to God in moments like that. You know, I was
Mhm.
talking the other time, I was talking about how we need to be as open to God as possible, because really there is nothing you're packaging in front of him. There's nothing to package, there's nothing to hide and all of that. You know, you feel like, okay, I'm feeling in this. This is how I feel about it. I don't know how to navigate this. It requires sincerity to accept that, okay, this is the situation right now and I would need your help. And the truth is, God would always come through. God would always come through. Thank you very much. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
everyone. If you're just joining in, thank you so much. And we are so glad that you're here. Thank you for being here. Like I said earlier, if you have questions, you have contributions, lessons from your own journey you would like to share with us, want us to learn from you, please feel free to drop it in the chat, or you can um, give me a hand raise and I would get to you. Talking about the music sphere now, or the music industry now,
Yeah.
what is going on there? Like, what does it look like right now, especially for believers that are on this call that are into the music sphere? Like, what is it looking like right now? What can we do? How can we make more impact in that sphere?
Personally, I believe we need more godly people, filling up the music and entertainment space, because um, we need righteous people coming out to do songs. It's funny how we just see how, maybe not funny, but is a thing where is a thing of concern to me, where how back in the days, even quote and unquote secular songs, had meanings, spoke, addressed issues in with life, spoke about love, and was just meaningful. But now the secular songs, quote and unquote, that we have are just profane, talking about sex, nudity, profanity, and what have you. When believers are quiet, unrighteousness will continue to be the order of the day. So personally, what I do is, try to encourage believers to be out there to dominate the industry. A lot of people just, particularly believers, a lot of people just want to stay within the four walls of church. A lot of people just want to come to church, serve God, and that's all about my music, and go back to my 9 to 5, and and all of that. I even hear now it's something that is popular, how people tell people that music cannot even pay, and all of that. So you have other ones, or people who have left music, encouraging people to leave music and pick up tech, and do all of those things. And many times I discuss with my wife that you never hear doctors coming out to advise doctors to leave medicine to go into law or into what have you. So I'm I'm always I'm always an advocate for people, for believers to rise up, just as it is with politics in this society where we are in the UK now, particularly. We have a lot of Muslims, we have a lot of all these people dominating the political spaces. We have mayors becoming Muslims and everything. You know that policies that would arise from those things are policies that will not favor Christians if Christians keep quiet and don't take up such spaces. So it's the same thing with music. So if believers do not want to dominate this industry and create structures that can be favorable even for believers. We don't want to have weddings and we are struggling to have songs to play. So I'm just an advocate of that. I believe that believers should arise in that regard and dominate the music and entertainment space. Let's have people become event um, people going to just enter the entertainment industry. People come up with awards that are godly, awards that you don't have to pay for. I mean, there's just a lot to talk about, but I'm just an advocate, and in my own little sphere, I'm just trying to, to to do that and impact the space around me. But
Yeah,
that's what I believe in.
yeah, thank you. That is also one of the reasons, we are doing this, because there's just a need for believers to arise. There's a need for people to begin, especially saints, believers, to begin to look beyond themselves. Now, no matter the sphere, no matter the industry, wherever it is God has placed, if you're having a burden in your heart for certain things, for a cause, for certain people, you know, it's just time to begin to do something about it. It's not enough to sit down and we all complain. Everybody's complaining, oh, there are lots of bad music out there, you know, children are spoiled these days, parents are not doing well these days. We all have things to say, but the question I always ask is, what are you doing about it? Because it is not enough to complain. It is not enough to say things are not right. Marriages are failing these days and a whole lot of things like that. What are you doing about it? If God is placing something in your heart, a burden in your heart, if you know you have a gift for something, you have an ability for something, you have experienced things in the past that you feel like, okay, you have learned from, and you feel like someone else can learn from you, then stand up and do something. Speak if you need to speak, write if you need to write, start that community if you need to start it. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just do something about it. It's not enough for us to sit. Like you said, we need to begin to infiltrate those spheres too, because and like I usually say, the darkness is getting darker, and we just need to stand up and do stuff. So I would also want to ask, what do you think might be the problem? Like, why do you think we have so many sins? Because I was even thinking about it. If you look at the ratio of Christians we have all over the world, and the transformation we are seeing in our society, it's not correlating. That gap is huge. That gap is huge. So what do you think might be the issue? What exactly might be the issue? What are we not doing right?
To be fair, some of this might be doctrinal issues. It might be a case of a solid foundation not being laid. I remember when I do something called Jazz and Blankets. I have a band like that from my company. We do the whole idea was funny how my wife just even brought about the name. We're having a conversation that on Valentine's Day, where do believers go to spend time with their partners? Particularly in this kind of situation, just on a Friday, you want to go out to just relax with your husband or something. Where can you go to? Majority of the places you have here are like pubs. There's no way that it's clean for people to just sit down and hang out and just spend time with your loved one and all of that. And I started that, and I remember is also in line what we are talking about, because I remember when I started this, someone literally sent me a message and said I'm backsliding, but that 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 there's grace for me, she's praying for me and all of that. I just felt like there was a knowledge gap. Do you understand? I was at the point where I was burdened with a solution for people. Meanwhile, some other people see it as this is sin. So I think it might be a doctrinal issue, a foundational issue where certain believers feel like getting into these fairs might cause you to sin. There are people who actually still think that going into politics will literally kill your faith and make you sin. But if if all we have is darkness, keep on dominating, then there won't be light anyway. So I think that's like one major issue that I highlighted even in thinking about it, that many believers are really not enlightened on these issues, and they just think that someone somewhere is just supposed to do this and they're supposed to do it right, not knowing that we believers should actually be the ones to step up to this. So I feel it's a doctrinal issue, might be an issue, and thank God that people are more knowledgeable now. we are raising kids, so we should be the ones to break all of this barrier. We are raising kids at home. What are we going to teach them even before they get into church or get into the world? How are we going to raise them? So we are the ones that would now only to influence these things. But I strongly believe that it's part of the issue. It's a doctrinal issue, or or a foundation that is shaky. Let me put it that way. And certain things need to be corrected from the foundation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was so good. Yeah. Please, if you have questions, this might be the right time to ask your question. If you have any contribution, please feel free to contribute. If you have lessons, things you want to share from your own journey, please feel free to. So as we round up, so everyone on the call, what has been your light bulb moment from our conversation today? What has stood out for you, even as you leave this call? Because it's very important that we don't just come and gather together. It's also important that we check that we have also just gotten something. What are you holding on to, even as you step out of this call? What was that light bulb moment for you? Please, if you can share with us, you can drop it in the chat if you want to, or you can just maybe raise a hand and I would get to you. Anyone? All right, thank you so much. Kingsley, it's been an amazing evening. Thank you for shedding light on all of these things for us. Thank you for shedding light on all of these things for us. Thank you. All right, you would find the recording after this on YouTube. You can always go back to it. Am I missing? Did someone raise their hand?
I think someone has a question.
Oh, okay. Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for this webinar, this session. It was really impactful. And I'm blessed because it answered some of the questions I've been asking myself and also trying to navigate. I just have one question for Ms. K. It's how do you navigate a new environment and a new terrain that is quite unfamiliar? Yeah, let's say you get into a new environment and it's quite unfamiliar. You didn't have the network that you used to have, and you're trying to build. It's more like you're trying to build everything afresh. How do you um, handle situations like that?
Okay.
Like, so the reason why I'm asking is because at this you're able to transition from Nigeria to the UK. So how was it for you initially when you came in? How were you able to scale through some of the hurdles?
Okay. Thank you for that question. I mean, this is something that I always just joke about because it feels like actually it is when you transition from Nigeria to the UK. First of all, UK is a leveler. So if you were a superstar in Nigeria or whatever, I know this is Lenny that asked the question here, and about if you were a superstar, if you were an influencer and all of that, first of all, when you get to the UK, everybody is a superstar. You're not getting somewhere and people want to take a selfie with you, and people are just minding their business and facing their life. Well, practically speaking, for me as a person, one of the things that has helped me in this country that God has blessed me with, and I know we mentioned this while we're in the call, is community. First of, even talk about I'm the Global Talent Visa recipient, and giving a backtrack of my journey. If I had known about this visa, Bookie, I don't think I would have done. Maybe I should not be saying this outside, but I don't think I would have done masters. I don't think I would have. Maybe I would have done the masters later on, maybe while on the visa. because of course we spent a lot of money doing masters, and I wasn't privy to that knowledge, to that information. And even while I was in school, I schooled in Newcastle then, and even while I was in school, the environment around me was, the environment of hustling and, trying to get the next warehouse job, the next care job. Not to say those things are bad, but if you are not surrounded with the right people, with the right community, you just get drowned in a survival mentality and not seeing that God has brought us to this land to actually, dominate and do what he will have us do. So, just transitioning, finished school, got into, CCI, of course I had met my wife before now and all of that. It was just the right environment. And someone just told me, I know there's a visa for musicians now. And the person really believed in me, with your skills and everything. And I just went to research it, and I saw that I was even more than qualified. So if there's one regret in my life, not regret basically, but if there's one thing I think I can correct about my life, is correcting the 16K or 18K that I paid for master's school fees, and I would have just gone straight into global talent visa. But then I wouldn't have known about this visa till like later in my stay here. And just having the right community exposed me to all of that. It has helped my faith, helped my career. You get to build relationships and opportunities coming from there. I know he's asking the question. I know in Lemidi is a musician, and that's one thing that has even helped me in this music space. Just being in the right atmosphere, being in the right environment, it also exposes you to opportunities. And I'm going to just say, don't settle for less. Don't settle for what might be the popular opinion. The fact that it's a new environment. TDJX usually says something that is something I learned from him a long time ago, how that you might be succeeding in one phase of your life, and then God takes you to the next level, but you're starting from level zero on that next phase of your life. So it's just a season of your life. Just see it as it's normal, even when you travel to a new surrounding. You need time to adapt, adjust, and then God will just keep leading you to the right people, and the right opportunities will just show up. It didn't just happen for me like that. All through school and shortly after school, it was not some form of a stable season for me, but I just stayed true to what I was doing and just held on to God, and I was surrounded. God helped me to build the right community, and it just opened me up to a lot of opportunities. So you need the right community, especially in a place like the UK. I know not everyone is in the UK, but in a place like this, you need the right community. You need the right set of people to help you navigate whatever you do. The answer you need might just be in the lips of just one person who might, direct you. Funny how the things that I'm even doing now, it feels like I'm sort of setting the pace for people around me. I started doing a show in Birmingham, and it felt like I was the one that opened up a venue for people around my church. Creatives started, seeing the possibilities of, I could do a concert. It doesn't mean that I've left Nigeria and I can't do this, and I can still do it. A lot of people started opening their brands, started using the venue to do places and all of that. So just the right people around you can just, ignite that passion in you, can just fuel up on that thing that can just answer that question or solve that problem that might be an issue for you. So if it's not happening now, it's just a season. Just pray for the right the right people, the right community. That's what I'll say. I hope I answered your question. And I don't know if Buki would have
Yeah, I
been
mean,
able
Yes,
to
thank you
answer.
so
you
much.
you've touched it basically. I hope your question has been answered. Yeah.
Yeah, it has. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. All right. Is there still any other question? And in the absence of any other question, yeah, we'll just wrap it up for tonight. Thank you so much for coming. You would find the recording after this, maybe in a few days, in a couple of days, on YouTube. if you check OPAS with Bukola, and you would also find our previous recordings. You know, we do live conversations with everyday people around us to learn more from their journey and to receive courage, wisdom, and insight from their journey. Because sometimes we are always looking too far ahead. While it's okay to look far ahead at people that have gone ahead of us and all of that, it's also okay to look at those that are beside us, that are also taking those bold steps, and just draw courage from them as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you. It's been such an amazing evening, and I hope we've all been blessed. Thank you, Kingsley, for being here. It's been beautiful doing this with you this evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you.